All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are getting everyone on the line who is going to be serving as a panelist today. Our session is community development in opportunity zones, and I'm excited to be the moderator for this afternoon's session. We have a quick, probably about 40 minutes and ticking downward to go through some really good information about opportunity zones. But please note, because of those time constraints, you will not learn everything that you need to know about opportunity zones. This will essentially be a kickoff for future conversations that we hope to host in collaboration with InnoPower and with the Indianapolis Recorder. So stay tuned for more details about that. Today, we do have some very distinguished panelists. I'll quickly introduce myself and then I'll allow them to introduce themselves. I'm Kaliah Ligon. I am the local director for community entrepreneurship with Forward Cities, which is a national nonprofit that is working to build more inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystems around the United States. Here in Indianapolis, we are particularly focused on Black and Brown entrepreneurs in the Northeast, near Northwest and Northwest areas of Indianapolis. And I hope that you find what we're going to talk about today very interesting and informative. So I will just kind of do a little round robin to introduce our speakers. And so I'll start on my left on my screen is Grant McFann. Grant, if you'll just tell us what you do and give us a really quick headline of what your organization does to serve the community.
Certainly. I'm an analyst with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I work in the Indianapolis Field Office in the Office of Field Policy and Management. So we coordinate the delivery of HUD's programs in Indiana, which includes a direct or indirect housing relationship with about 1 million Hoosiers.
Wow. All right. Sorry to make anybody else go after that. On my right, on my screen, I have Emily Scott.
Hi everyone, Emily Scott. I'm an Economic Development Program Officer with Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LISC. We're a national community development intermediary organization and a community development financial institution. And here in Indianapolis, we work in a variety of different neighborhoods to support housing development, small business development, entrepreneurship, workforce development, and we also serve as the backbone agency for the Opportunity Investment Consortium of Indiana, which we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Awesome, thank you, Emily. Next, Jennifer Bartenbach.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Bartenbach. I am the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the Central Indiana Community Foundation, or CICF. We are the largest community foundation here in Indiana with over $800 million in assets under management. And we do three things. We do grant making to local organizations. We help donors realize their philanthropic goals. And we lead on community leadership in our communities.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up, we have Keith Broadnax.
Good morning. My name is Keith Broadnax. I am a Senior Vice President of Business Development for SENER. SENER is a community development financial institution that works in 8 states around the Midwest and East Coast. And we are our primary investor in low-income housing tax credits and new markets tax credits. And in Indiana, have invested in over 130 low-income housing tax credit properties and a little over 7,000 units and over 50 million in new markets tax credits. So what I'm really happy about is we're going to be a new markets investor in a Ivy Tech's Automotive Training Center over by the old Lafayette Square Mall, which I'm excited to see get started.
Oh, that's fantastic. I look forward to learning more about that. And I know that we have another panelist who is going to be joining us. I'm not sure if she's on the line yet, but Naomi Smith, if you're here, then please go ahead and introduce yourself. If not, what we'll do is we'll get rolling and we'll make sure to roll Naomi in because she does have some really great things to add to the content as well. All right, and not hearing her being available right now, we'll add her in, as I said. While we're also waiting, I want to just confirm that you all know that you can use the chat feature. I will try to check it periodically, but ultimately we want you to right now just use that feature to just say who you are that are on the line and give us an idea of who you are. Are you someone who lives in an opportunity zone neighborhood? Are you a financial investor? Are you an entrepreneur or small business owner? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And because we want to get an idea of who's on with us, so we make sure we can answer questions that make sense for what you're interested in. And if you consider yourself all three, a financial investor, a community member in an opportunity zone, and an entrepreneur, then fabulous. Thank you for joining us. So we'll start out by just, answering the obvious. What the heck is an opportunity zone? And Grant, will you kind of break it down for us at maybe a third grade level if you can?
Third grade. I'll try my best. Thanks, Kaliah. So opportunity zones themselves, they're places. They are neighborhoods, and specifically they are census tracts. And they were census tracts that were identified in 2018 by the governors of each state as having particular development potential. And so in Indiana, there's 156 census tracts that were designated. And that's roughly 10% of the census tracts in Indiana. 123 of those are urban and 33 of them are rural. So for those census tracts, those places, those neighborhoods, the federal government created two incentives, and they're supposed to work complementary to one another to help encourage development. So the first incentive, and the one that's talked about most often, is the tax incentive. So what it does is it encourages people who have existing appreciated assets. So perhaps you bought Google stock in 2002, or maybe you bought a rental property 10 years ago. And in either case, you're ready to unload that asset, and it has appreciated over the time that you've owned it. So if you then take that appreciation and you would put that appreciation into a new a fund, an opportunity fund, which is effectively a bank account tied to a new legal entity. Then you would take the capital in that bank account, in that opportunity fund, and you would use it to acquire a stake in a business or in real estate that's located in an opportunity zone in one of the census tracts that were identified in 2018. And then that investment is what receives the special tax treatment. So the idea is that there would be, you would have reduced tax liability based on the gains in that new business or real estate acquisition as you hold it over time. So the thought then is that this would get investors who are existing investors to divest themselves of their existing investments, their rental properties or their Google stock, and then put it into new investments in these census tracts. So typically those funds, like those opportunity funds, those bank accounts you would use the funds in that to make one acquisition, typically. It's not uncommon for a fund to make do multiple deals, to make multiple investments. It's just a lot more complex and so a lot less common.
Okay.
So that's the first incentive. The second incentive is a much broader one, and it applies, I think, much more broadly, and that's aimed at organizations that are nonprofit or public agencies, anyone carrying out a project that might be a social benefit or a public benefit in an opportunity zone. There's special preference on a whole range, more than 200 federal programs for the projects that they're carrying out. So the theory is then that those two incentives, the one that encourages the direction of federal funding into opportunity zones and the one that encourages private investment into opportunity zones, would work together to kind of unlock the potential in those zones for development. That might be closer to 8th grade, maybe even like 12th grade. But it's what I can do, Kaliah.
You helped me, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Grant, for sharing and giving us that background. Not quite 3rd grade, you're right, but I think we get it. So Naomi Smith is here and has joined us. And so Naomi, if you could just tell us who you are and what your organization does to support the community. And then I wanted to throw the next question to you as well. And I do see that you are on mute.
Yes, I'm here. And now I'm not on mute. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here. My name is Naomi Smith. I'm the Research Policy Analyst at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And what's really cool about my organization is that we put the most Black interns on Capitol Hill. And so internships on the Hill are very difficult for some folks because typically they're unpaid. And what my organization does right now is we provide housing and stipends for Black students to intern on Capitol Hill with members of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. But in addition to our internship program, we also have a very dynamic research wing in the Center for Policy Analysis and Research, where we focus on many different sectors that affect the Black life and the people of the global Black diaspora. So part of that is economic wealth creation for Black people, where we focused a little bit last year on opportunity zones. And so from that, I wrote an issue brief on kind of examining the benefits and challenges that opportunity zones may present to Black communities.
That's fantastic. And that was a perfect segue, because I was going to ask you to tell us a little bit about what you've written and why people should care about opportunity zones.
Right. So my analysis, it kind of talks about challenges we already face. So there's already a threat of gentrification and displacement in many low-income and communities of color. And what I examine the opportunity zones may possess is kind of amplifying that threat to displacement, job insecurity, and things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know that there have been a lot of folks who are skeptical and or worried about opportunity zones. I want to kick the next question over to Emily Scott at LISC and just ask you to tell us about I believe it's called the Opportunity Zone Investment Consortium, and who has access to that?
Sure. So the Opportunity Investment Consortium of Indiana is a platform that was developed that's composed of public and private investors and community partners who have an interest in opportunity zones and wanted to come together to sort of create an online pairing tool to help connect technical expertise, but also investment to projects that are in opportunity zones. And so this Opportunity Investment Consortium of Indiana, it's a website, and anyone can get access to it. And essentially it's not unlike other resources that have been developed in other states and parts of the country that exist as both a hub of information and research and trainings that have been recorded on opportunity zones, but it's also a place to specifically connect to technical assistance providers like law firms, accounting firms that specialize in doing opportunity fund creation or navigating the legal or financial complexities of setting up an opportunity fund and being an investor. And also it's a place where both private sector investors, but also nonprofit and public sector investors can be contacted, but also see deals that are uploaded. So let's say you are a developer of a housing project that's in an opportunity zone and you are seeking to connect with different investors and that might be interested in both putting actual opportunity fund investments, but also that may have other tax incentives or other investment tools that can help move that project forward. There's actually a space on this consortium website where someone can enter some really high level information about their project. They don't have to upload a ton of documents, but it helps start that conversation with different organizations that might be able to invest in the project in different ways. So while the primary purpose is to help uplift the actual structure and benefit of opportunity zone funds, investors that are in the portal and in the consortium also, like I said, have other tools that might include tax credits or different local incentives or grants or other specialized lending products that are tailored towards, commercial projects or housing projects or maybe healthcare facilities or childcare facilities that they can also reach out to that developer or that individual who's looking to do that project and try to see how they can compare those tools. So it's really a matchmaking platform, but also a resource hub that is intended to specifically focus on opportunity zones in Indiana.
Okay, thank you, Emily. So if I'm in the scenario that I think that Grant painted earlier, and I'm selling off some rental housing and I've got these capital gains, I could come to the Opportunity Investment Consortium website and say, hey, I'm an investor looking to invest, and just kind of see who has a potential deal that I might want to invest in there.
Sort of. It's a little bit different. So essentially, there are certain investors that it's kind of actually the opposite of what you said. So if there is an accredited investor that wants to join the consortium, then they essentially have to get set up to receive those deals. So it's actually more set up for a developer, and it could be large scale or small scale, or a business that's seeking investment to essentially pitch their project to various sets of investors. But there are ways for new investors to get involved in the consortium, but there's not necessarily a long list of publicly viewable investment opportunities, if that makes sense, at least at this point, maybe down the road.
Okay. So perhaps if, like you said, on the converse of that, if I'm that real estate developer and I'm saying, hey, I want in small scale, right? I need some investment, that I could go in that way and say, like, I'm looking for someone to invest in my projects. Okay, fantastic. And you mentioned the term accredited investor, so I want to come back to that. But while you're thinking on that, I want to go to Jennifer Bartenbach and make sure that I get her and then next Keith involved. Want to pull them in. So Jennifer, how can CICF's impact Central Indiana accounts be leveraged in opportunity zones? Are there ways for them to be involved in that investment consortium that Emily talked about?
So one of the things we are talking about with Impact Central Indiana, which is our newly created multi-member LLC to facilitate impact investments, is how we can reach those that maybe aren't accredited investors. And, either, I think there's a stigma that to be involved in opportunity zones, you need 6 and 7 figure capital gains. And so what we are investigating through Impact Central Indiana is the notion of, could we get a large group of potential opportunity zone investors to come together and bring all of their capital gains into one pool, and then identify a neighborhood that one is running along sort of the mission of the community foundation and really doing community development work or affordable housing work in a specific neighborhood. And that, I think, that allows local residents to make a difference right where they're living. And so it's not the developer taking advantage of opportunity zone credits, to build the next high-rise apartment building downtown, but maybe in those other opportunity zone areas where the neighborhoods could really use the affordable housing and community development. So one of two things. And I also think that we're looking at trying to create a fund where you could all commingle together and the foundation could find those projects. While I think what Emily was talking about is a fantastic resource, a lot of us, that may not have the significant capital gains like that also don't have the ability to identify a project. So the community foundation with our partners can identify those projects to do that. And we can also create a fund in Impact Central Indiana, if you don't have capital gains, to still be able to invest in your local neighborhood.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Okay. So I think between the funds that you all are going to be developing and the opportunity investment consortium opportunities, there's something for everyone is what it sounds like, which I think will probably set some folks' minds at ease because I think people are trying to figure out, how do I participate? And so Keith, I wanted to ask you, are there who can kind of help those everyday investors navigate opportunity zone and legislation? Is there a group that's kind of designated to do that, or what would you suggest?
There are really no groups on, Emily mentioned that, a good resource to just get the basics is to go through some of the resources on the Opportunity Investment Consortium site. Outside of that, the best resources are going to are your local accountant. Most of the accounting firms understand the program, possibly your attorney, and there are also some opportunity zone consultants out here that can help you through it.
Okay, fantastic. So there's folks who are kind of specializing in opportunity zone legislation and can break it down, maybe not at that 3rd grade level that we joked about earlier, but can help folks who are interested in creating some future investment opportunities and realizing those tax benefits to do that. Great.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Naomi, I wanted to just kind of go back to some pieces about the legislation. Some folks are aware and some are not, but there is a good amount of concern about the lack of clarity in some of the legislation in terms of the community benefit and who's monitoring that community benefit for people who live in the opportunity zones. What are some examples, or are there any examples of community-led opportunity zone deals that you're familiar with?
So there are definitely some examples of communities that have began to prepare for opportunity zone investment. So I believe it was Cleveland that started investing more in affordable housing so that when these opportunity zone investments do come to their community, that folks will have places to live, places to raise their families with the influx of investments and other folks coming into their area. And same with, I believe it was Oakland, California, where they began to invest more in transportation so that people will be able to go to and from new opportunities in these opportunity zones.
Okay, so it sounds like they did some upfront investment before a lot of investment starts to roll to kind of hedge against the potential for gentrification and displacement.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, someone in our chat asked what some of those guardrails were. And so it sounds like there's the potential to kind of work with your city and different municipal entities to do that work.
Yes, definitely. Local communities can begin to take accountability before the investments roll in, and that's one way to kind of guardrail some of the displacement or maybe some of the less positive aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Keith, do you know of any particular developments here in Indiana that have taken place through Opportunity Zone deals that you've seen do have a true community benefit?
Yeah, we helped garner an investment, Opportunity Zone investment in Evansville, actually a deal that actually came through the consortium, where it's called the Lofts on Main in Evansville, and it's in a neighborhood called the Jacobsville neighborhood in Evansville, which is actually a federal promise zone. So that developer was able to get the resources that are available to the promise zone, tax abatements and subsidies from the city, and put together a number of Opportunity Zone investors and be able to produce 180 units of workforce housing targeting families